You're backstage. Okay, we'll see how that works. Welcome to, well, I guess I ought to wait till it starts. The excitement never quits. I get to do my live stream too. This is cool. But I'm doing this live stream on my phone, so there you go. It won't be as long as the one on Sarah's channel. But we're about to go. I'm excited. Are you excited? Are you here? Is anybody here?
All right. Welcome, everybody.
Greetings from South Carolina. Welcome to the show.
I love that intro. I was like, oh wait, we're doing a show.
Dan gave me the videos put into it, and I wrote the song and sent it. So
It's what we call a collaboration.
Right?
Sarah, I'm also trying to live stream this on my channel by using a phone, and the connection.
The Geek in the house. We got Esmeralda, and I don't know. I'm just hitting you by just Wood jamming. Wood jamming's in the house. Woo. All right.
Well, I feel lucky anybody showed up because with my shows are cursed. You know that. If anything bad's going to happen, it's going to happen. Last time I was going to do a show, a hurricane come blew everything away.
Right.
So what are we starting off with today, Thrash? Classic Universal Monsters?
Classic Universal Monsters, specifically the kingpin of them all, Count Dracula, played by iconic Eastern European diva, and I'm going to say it wrong.
Sarah, I'm here.
Bela Lugosi.
Just letting you know, I am actually here.
Right, okay.
You can't see me.
Where were you? I do now. Okay. Perfect.
Let me explain. I just got a text from Sarah that asked me if I was coming.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
my first question is, we all grew up with these things. I mean, for crying out loud, most of us, it wasn't even our parents' movies. The Universal Monsters were our grandparents' movies. So, where do you, contextually, when you first think of Universal Monsters, which one do you think of, and who were you watching it with? Your mom, your dad, your grandfather? Who was your first exposure to Universal horror films?
Sarah can go first because she's a lady. Ladies first.
Okay. Let's see here. Well, I gotta be real with you guys. I didn't really watch much of that stuff with my parents. My dad was really into westerns and Dirty Harry and stuff like that, right? And my mom never really that much into horror to begin with. But I have to say, I'll correct that and start nowadays to do that. So as far as classic, horror for Dracula stuff goes, I'm here to learn mostly tonight.
Excellent.
Good answer. Good answer.
Thank you. I went to school.
How about you, Danny?
Me, I'd say my first real experience with the classic Universal Monsters come at a real young age. My mom and my dad got divorced, and I wound up with a stepdad. But I had the greatest stepdad in the world, and he loved horror movies, especially the old 50s and 60s B movies. And they were this show called Shock Theater that come on every Sunday. And it's where I every Sunday from 1973 to probably to the 80s, I'd watch Sunday afternoon. Even after I moved out the house, I'd go back on Sundays, eat dinner with mom and dad, and watch horror movies with my stepdad. It was kind of a thing we did every Sunday, and that was my first exposure to like Frankenstein, the Wolf Man, Dracula with Bella Lugosi. How's that Tug said? Bella Lugosi with Bella, and but my first one I really remember as a kid, before you get to that age where you're actually watching the big spider get burned or watching a monster movie. I remember Abbott and Costello meet was it? I think Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yes.
Yeah, I think that was the name. But they meet all of them, and that was really, I think, my youngest experience with the Universal monsters was seeing the Abbott and Costello stuff, because I was watching all the Abbott and Costello stuff at 6, 7 years old. You know.
There was a station when I was growing up that every Sunday would show an Abbott and Costello movie, and that one was one of my favorites, which is ironic because it was Lou Costello's least favorite. He didn't want to do it. He said, and I quote, "I've seen funnier things on a tombstone." But I thought they were great in it. I thought Bella was at his best. I thought Lon Chaney Jr. was at his best. They, and again, you have to remember, that movie, that wasn't contemporary. That was like 1948, I want to say. You have to remember the first the first Dracula movie came out in 1931. So it was substantially later. They're both in black and white, so you like to think, oh yeah, they came out at the same time. No, it was much later. But I gotta tell you, Lugosi still had it, as did Creighton Hull Jr. or Lon Chaney Jr. The one thing they didn't have is they didn't have Boris Karloff. And there's an anecdote that Boris Karloff didn't want to do that movie because he didn't want to cheapen the monster. There was also possibly he had a bad back by this point. Maybe he just wasn't up to it. But he thought the idea of a comedy monster movie was silly. Well, apparently, the story goes that he heard from other cast members they had so much fun, he later kicked himself for not making that movie. And he went on to actually do 2 Abbott Costello movies. And it's very rare they brought a villain back. So it was actually good that Boris Karloff got another chance. But I gotta tell you, it's funny, you mentioned the early days. As I'm sure all of you know, one of my earliest memories when I was a kid, my father worked very long hours when I was a kid, but he was always home on Saturdays, sometimes hungover, but always home. And we would watch Saturday morning cartoons. And then after Saturday morning cartoons, it wasn't Shock Theater. I believe it was called just Creature Feature. But there was a local, this was in New York, there was a local horror show that showed horror movies every Saturday afternoon. And that was my first exposure to the actual classic horror films. The Hammer horrors, science fiction, like Atomic Submarine. I remember Atomic Submarine from when I was like 4 years old, but I didn't know the name of it. Do you have any movies you have to go through to find Atomic Submarine when you don't know the name?
I do now.
Oh yeah, but as far as the Universal monsters go, I gotta tell you, my parents too got divorced right around 72, and I was living with Mama Thrash, and she had a friend whose name eludes me. Oh God, I wish I could remember. I think his name was Howard. But as a kindergartner, somehow I got stuck in my head that he reminded me of Count Dracula. And this guy was so cool. He played up on it. He goes, "That's because I am Count Dracula. I'm in disguise, but I'm living here." And he created this whole backstory about how he really was Dracula. We would watch horror movies together when he was over, and he was like an expert on Universal horror. And he would tell me all the stories of the movies I hadn't seen. Because, there's always one that you never see, but it kind of fills in the gaps. He knew all the backstories. He was a super, super guy. Sadly, people became gone. I lost touch with him. But he's the one who gave me my love of Universal horror films. In fact, he gave me 2 gifts before I left. They were model kits. Dan, you've done those old model kits. I forgot the name of them, but they were really, really popular when we were kids. It was this one company.
Well, I actually had 2 different sets. I had the really good models, that come in the box where you had to glue each little piece together, and then you had to actually paint them and everything. Just complete construct. The ones that were featured in the Salem's Lot movie that the kid was putting together, and I had that same set he did. His little monster set. He actually used the cross from Dracula set to fend off the vampire in the room scene.
But yeah, he gave me two of those. He gave me one for Count Dracula, and two that shows how well the guy knew me, Godzilla. And I was like, and it was funny too, because do you remember glow in the dark plastic was kind of a novelty at this point, and the kids always had like one card of glow in the dark accessories. So if you wanted Godzilla's head to glow, or Count Dracula to have glow in the dark bats in the background, you had the option of adding that to the set. So yeah, this guy created my enduring love of Universal Monsters.
The little glowing bats from the Dracula one actually made it with me up until like the 90s before I finally lost them. Everything else was gone, but I still had them glowing little bats.
Yeah, so you remember those? Yeah,
Yeah.
those were awesome. Those were awesome. Before I went to bed, I would hold them in front of my lamp for like 15 minutes to see how long I could get them to stay glowing before I fell asleep.
When I said they were two different kinds, the one that everybody talks about is the ones you had to glue together, the expensive, fancy ones. But there actually was a snap together, cheaper model of it. And I like this. I like the snap together ones because they only cost 99 cents, and if they got broke, you just go get another one. You could actually play with them. You know, you could have action with them.
And they were easier because they snapped together.
Yeah.
As opposed to the glue, you had to like sit there like an idiot holding the two pieces.
And when you were playing Frankenstein, it was really cool because as you went, you could snap him together.
I remember my grandfather who had about 15 strokes over the course of my childhood. He got the last rites like 4 different times. It got to the point where we thought the man was never actually going to die. Sadly, he did, but that's another story for us. But one time he had a stroke, and we were visiting the hospital, and there was a gift shop, and I walked by with my uncle, and there was a little wind-up Frankenstein, and he bought it for me, and I had that for years. I love my little Frankenstein. I called it the Frankenstein monster, not Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein monster.
You know,
Yes.
it's really hard for me to pick one of the Universal monsters to be my favorite. It really is because I love them all equally. Even the Gill Man, the creature from the Black Lagoon. I like him. I like him just as much as I like Frankenstein or the Wolf Man. But if I had to pick one, once again, of all of them, my favorite would have been Dracula. For some reason, I was always drawn more to the vampires than the other monsters.
I can see it because he's just so genteel and cool. And, you know, then there's a kind of, well, I mean, Lawrence Talbot, when he's in human form, is a normal person. When he's a wolfman, you can't really interact with him. You can interact with Dracula. And in The Bride of Frankenstein, he talks, but he's warm now, sleep later. He's not really a conversationalist. So yeah, the Dracula is always the most interactive.
And to me,
I can see that.
to me, with Universal's old classic monsters, dude, the tear in my eye, the saddest thing. What's the saddest thing you can say about them movies?
That they're old. They don't make them like that anymore.
They're older than me. That's rare. But the saddest thing is Bela Lugosi only plays Dracula twice.
Wise.
I wish we had 6 movies with Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Don't care what he was doing. Don't care if he was sitting in the castle writing a letter. Just wish we had more of that.
Yeah, is it Tesla he plays in Mark of the Vampire? It's not Dracula. It's a vampire, but it's not. In Plan 9 from Outer Space, he's just Dr. Ghoul.
Yeah.
And he just sort of goes on like this.
And half the movie ain't even him, it's the dentist.
Yes, who was like 6 inches taller than he was. But he is at least in the movie.
Mm.
But, yeah. Of course, I gotta tell you, my favorite Count Dracula, don't hate me, isn't Bela Lugosi. Christopher Lee narrowly nudges. Fine as Bela is, I think Christopher Lee, in my opinion, when I think Count Dracula, I think Christopher Lee.
You know, I can't put Christopher Lee against Bela Lugosi. To me, that's not fair because they are just two different eras in time. For the era of the 40s and 50s, that kind of movies back then, Bela Lugosi's Dracula. He is the classic Dracula. He is the one who started it. But when you get past that and you get into the 70s, then you get to where you can't deny that Christopher Lee was the 70s Dracula. I mean, if you, but that's only because of the crappy competition he had. Like if you say Dracula versus Billy the Kid,
It's funny you mention that.
Blackula.
John Carradine plays a vampire more than Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, okay, there you go. John Carradine's Dracula.
John Carradine's Dracula.
The screwdriver in the eyes of the Dracula series.
He was Dracula in Dracula versus Billy the Kid, and does it in a couple other movies as well.
Yeah, and he wears he wears a big tall top hat like Harold was wearing today.
Based. Now I have to see that for sure. I'm sure it's all very classically good and all that.
Here's a little factoid about Christopher Lee. He's the only person to play Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy. He played all three.
Nice.
Crazy. Steve, how's it going? Oh, and I saw Big Guys 45 out there. Hey, Big Guys 45, good to see you.
You may be right about that. What? Did Lon Chaney never play the Mummy, did he? Lon Chaney Jr.?
No.
No, he did not.
He only played the Wolfman. Hey, guys.
I actually thought he played Dracula in a movie or something.
Not to my knowledge.
I could be wrong.
He was in vampire movies, but he never played one.
Ah.
He was in Spider Babies, too.
Oh, God. I saw that, too. I saw that recently for some reason.
I think the 60th anniversary came up. That's probably why. Would have been 60 in 2020 this year.
Like earlier this year, I think I sat through that movie for some reason or another that I can't remember. I sat through a few movies this year that normally wouldn't have been on my list to watch. I rewatched Band of Brothers and realized it wasn't as good as I thought it was the first time. Now I kind of regret rewatching it.
Mrs. Thrash actually went to high school with one of them.
Really?
Donna. I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head, but yeah, he was in Band of Brothers.
One of the actors, not one of the original people. Now, I was going to say, how old you out there, boy? No. I was thinking, guy, he must have married an old lady.
Her father was a World War II veteran. Her father was.
Yeah, my father was.
My mom.
My dad was way older than my mother.
He would have had to have been.
Like, way older.
Same thing with Mrs. Thrash. They're both gone now, but her father was substantially.
And that's one of the reasons I think my dad, didn't live long into my adulthood is because he was so old. When I was a teenager, he was already in his 60s.
Wow.
Yeah. Plus, he had to deal with the cancer situation, and he passed away. It was cancer that got him,
Ooh, I did not know that.
That's just the worst.
But till his dying day, he swore up and down vampires was real.
Really?
Yeah. Said as a kid in Romania, he had encountered vampires. So there you go.
Yeah.
Your father was from Romania?
Excuse me?
Your father was from Romania?
He was from Italy, but he had lived in Romania for a while
Very good.
as a child.
Malakia. Oh, actually, I just thought of something. Give me a well, see if you count this. Okay, Boris Karloff played Frankenstein, obviously, right? He also played a mummy. So far, he's in Black Sabbath. He plays a Vertilac, which is a form of vampire. Do you count it, or do you still give it to Christopher Lee only? Oh, hey, Narcissus.
I give it to him. But when you said Black Sabbath, I was trying to think with it. What does he do? Play drums? And
No, it's the three stories, and
I know. It's a movie called Black Sabbath. But when you said Black Sabbath, that didn't click in my mind. I was thinking about the band, and I was wondering, did he play drums?
No. It took me a second. I was answering your question before I listened to your whole line and realized it was a joke. Sorry.
Whenever I make a joke nobody gets, I go over your head.
Make better jokes.
I do that a lot because nobody really gets my jokes. Some people get offended by them. Apparently, some people get offended by them.
I don't offend easily. I offend in the sense that I offend other people easily. I myself do not get offended.
Okay. Back to vampires and back to Dracula. I digress. So to me, outside Christopher Lee being the 70s essential Dracula, and Bela Lugosi being the original classic Dracula, there's been 1,000 other Dracula performances that we could criticize or critique. But of all of them I've seen, flashing back through my mind, of good performances, of Draculas I liked, or people who played Dracula and slaughtered it, the one that I liked the most, the one that I think just really like, hey, that was the good Dracula, was Frank Langella's Dracula. I think it was in 1979. And to me, I love this Dracula movie. I think it's a lot better than all the other Dracula movies they've made over the years, and even better than that new one with I'm not even going to say what I think the Dracula in that last one looked like, but it was torture. Sheer torture.
I think the Frank Langella version, that might have been the first movie I remember him from. Of course, I was a kid at the time, but I think that was the first movie I remember Frank Langella actually being in. So, I mean, I certainly do remember it. I don't remember anything about it, but I remember seeing it when I was a kid and thinking, oh, cool, vampire.
What I really liked in that movie, if you ever get a chance to recheck it out, definitely rewatch it, is how well they make the practical special effects look and how it's just not over the top. It's a vampire, classic Dracula story, classic Dracula movie with a really good looking Dracula that plays the part real well. Actually had a little feeling to it,
Nice.
Yeah. Have either one of you seen the movie Rabid?
Yeah, I have.
I would have almost guaranteed you have.
Yeah, I love that movie.
You can guarantee I have it, and you can guarantee he has.
Oh, yeah. By the way, there's certain scenes from that movie that nobody should ever show on YouTube because you will get a copyright strike. Trust me, I know.
Gee, I wonder how you know that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I think she was a form of vampire too.
Well, form certainly yes, but it was so funny because everybody remembers Marilyn Chambers for being on the cover of the Ivory Snowbox. Everyone knows that, and I guess she did some other movies as well. I'm not familiar with those.
Yeah.
But Rabbit. Oh, someone actually asked me recently if that was her. Cronenberg's first film. It was not. He made like 3 or 4 before. But that was his first attempt at true horror. And I gotta tell you, I remember watching that. I watched that movie because I was probably, I don't know, 14, 15, and Stephen King did. Someone asked him for his Halloween film list. This is back when video stores were like a thing. And it said, check out, for Halloween, check out your video store for any of these titles. And Stephen King gave a top 10 list of his favorite holiday films. And I'm like, but Stephen King, it's good enough for me. and I had heard about this movie called Rabbit, and I saw it, and I was like, wow. And the crazy thing about it, it's not just a vampire movie. It's a vampire movie slash pandemic movie. So it's even more relevant today than it was when I saw it 40 years ago. Well, 40 minimum, 40 easily. So it's actually a really slick film, and she's actually a surprisingly good actress in it. And if you watch closely, it's like, oh yeah, he was in this, and oh yeah, that guy was in that, and oh yeah, that guy was in this. There's a lot of like supporting actors, mostly from Canada, because it's a Canadian film. But if you haven't seen it, I can't say I highly recommend it, because as we were just discussing, it's a little intense in some places.
Well, since we're going to cover different kinds of vampires, let me bring up I've always considered this because it's actually based on a novel called The Space Vampires, and you know I'm going to bring up Life Force because it's the other movie that got me a copyright strike when I tried to show some of it. Yeah, do not show the trailer for that one on your channel or you will get in trouble. But it was worth it. It was worth it. Great movie, and I really liked the movie a lot. But they're a different kind of vampire. They're the ones that feed on the energy of the body and just drain people up into little old prunes when they suck the energy out.
Wow.
And the girl in that, her name is Matilda May is her name, if I remember correctly? Something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that, yeah.
I can't remember that guy that played in it right now. I can't remember his name. He played Charles Manson.
Oh, yeah. All I can remember now was Patrick Stewart's in it. And
he kissed that guy. Oh, my God.
And Bill Nighy, Bill something or other. God, English actor's been in everything.
Maybe somebody in chat will Google Life Force and tell me who. Steve Railsback.
Oh,
Railsback. Yeah, I remember because in the interview, Patrick Stewart said that he was his first on-screen kiss.
Brilliant.
I said, I don't think I would have told nobody that.
We told everybody now.
Oh, hey, Sydney. Thank you, Superplex, for confirming. Thank you. But yeah, now I always thought that film was it reminded me of one of the Quatermass movies. It was later redone as 5 Billion Years to Earth.
I love them movies too, especially the one with them giant grasshoppers. Grasshoppers from space. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one about the Martians who decides they're going to create a colony on Earth.
Yeah.
They have to modify the life forms.
That's one of the movies we used to watch on Shot Theater on Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over again, every year, 2 or 3 times. Because they had that certain run of like 50 or 60 movies they played a lot. Hardly ever got anything different than them same 50 or 60. And after 4 or 5 years, you've seen them all a few times. Once in a while, they'll slip something new in there, like the thing with 2 heads or that movie about them frogs. But mostly it's just old black and white original classics.
Both of those movies had Ray Milland in them, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I like Ray. I like both them movies.
It's just funny you mentioned that because both had Ray Milland. I'm like, we should do a Ray Milland night.
Yeah, that sounds like something. Well, I wouldn't know about all Ray Milland.
No, but we already have 2. You could throw in Panic in the Year Zero, and you could throw in the man with X-ray vision.
And the one where it's the end of the world, and him and his family go into the mountains to survive.
Panic in the Year Zero.
Is that it?
Frankie Avalon plays the song.
Wow, I can't remember the name of that movie, but I remember him being in it.
That's one of the first post-apocalyptic films.
I think I've seen all post-apocalyptic films.
I've seen most of them. Maybe not all, most of them.
You know, there's been quite a few other. Well, let's see, we're moving along pretty good, but there's been quite a few other vampire movies that didn't involve Dracula or a classic Universal monster. You know, I can think of stuff like Lost Boys and Bright Night right off the rip. That are Bordello of Blood with Dennis Miller. Just vampire movies that you, from Dusk to Dawn especially, are movies that you just really love and they're really great vampire movies, but they're not from the Universal line. They're not 50 stuff. They're more modern.
I saw Fright Night on Halloween at a midnight movie when I was actually still in high school. I don't know how I got permission to do it, although I was already going to the Rocky Horror Picture Show at that time anyway. Um, but me and some friends, we all went to see Fright Night, and I fell in love with that movie. I mean, everyone is at their best. We were talking about it earlier today. The greatest thing about it, too, by the way, is it tapped into that whole 80s spirit of nostalgia because one of the main subplots behind it is this whole Peter Vincent, who is effectively Peter Cushing, and he is in those. He's playing Van Helsing in all those old Hammer horror vampire movies, and then you have that with a modern take on a modern vampire who to get sustenance by calling prostitutes, and it's a really slick movie. And don't laugh at me. I still have a copy of the soundtrack on vinyl. It has a really amazing soundtrack, and most of it's on YouTube. But I still have a copy in record form.
Wow.
Records are cool.
I've got a bit of vinyl. Most of my vinyl's like LP versions of old classic radio shows like the Green Hornet or Dick Tracy or stuff like that. I got a lot of record recordings of old TV shows or old radio shows actually. One night we'll do them and I'll take the 500-pound box down and go through a few of them.
Oh, Andy brought up an excellent point. Friday Night came out in the summer, yes it did, but a local theater used to show midnight movies, and so on Halloween they would, even if they weren't first run, they would get these movies to show on Halloween. I think another screen was showing Friday the 13th, and another one at that night was showing Pieces, the Italian horror film, which is actually filmed in Boston, or at least New England, Massachusetts for some reason. But if you haven't seen Pieces, that one's yeah.
You see, that's something I really love about the place I live is a little small town. I mean, we're talking closest thing you can get to the forest without actually being there is where I grew up. You know, the next step over 3 miles away was deep woods. So in this little town, there wasn't nothing to do much. But the little town right next to us, walking distance, called Williamston, they had a theater called the Osteen, and they showed just like every other theater in the world, it had one big screen and held about 150 people. And every Saturday, you know, just like every movie place in the world, people went there and watched regular movies, you know, whatever was out. I remember seeing Smokey and the Bandit in there on a Friday night. But what they did, excuse me?
No, go ahead.
But what they did, round about September 1st when Halloween was coming up, every weekend they had dollar movies. And they would go back and pick out some old classic movies like The Fly or The American Werewolf in London was one of the ones they showed. They'd go pick out a movie that was popular or a horror movie that was popular a couple of years ago or 20 years ago, and they'd show it for $1. So you got to have the big screen experience on a movie you probably would have never seen in the theater. Like I remember seeing The Blob on a big screen. And it just kind of made you look around under the seats. I remember seeing this movie called Deadly Eyes about these rats. And I remember saying, hey, we're sitting in a theater watching a movie called Deadly Eyes about giant rats in a theater known to have rats running around the floor eating the popcorn while you're trying to watch a movie.
Great.
So that kind of bugged me out a little bit. Because that theater did once in a while get a rat in there and you'd run up and steal your popcorn.
Ew.
Yeah, well, it was a hillbilly theater. It was a hillbilly theater in a small town, and A matter of fact, it got after a while. After I quit going there, I heard it got the nickname the Rat Palace. I heard the rats would tote your whole popcorn box off. It shut down after a while though. I quit going there after. I don't like rats.
It's like in World War One, where they used to hang the meat in bags in the rafters so the rats wouldn't get it. And the rats learned to crawl along the wooden beams so they could get to the bags of meat like squirrels. Not that squirrels eat meat, but I'm sure they would. Oh, and I'm sorry, I was speaking to you of consciousness earlier, Danny. I saw Cindy said she tried to get into Fright Night and they wouldn't let her. She was 17. I go, it was rated R. 16 and above, they shouldn't have given you a static. I'm sorry, Cindy, but it was a good movie. Let me clue you in. But yeah.
Well, when I was 13 years old, I was over 6 foot tall. Nobody ever questioned me about getting in no movies too much.
You were 6 feet when you were 13.
Yeah, I'm 6'4", and by the time I was 12, 13, I was easily 6 foot.
That's crazy. I'm 6 3/4. I'm just under 5'7".
Yeah.
But I was pretty much the same height I was when I was 12. At one point I was like the tallest kid in my class, but then I stopped growing.
Yeah. The funny part is, all my brothers call me Tiny, because I'm the little run of the family. I make the joke because I'm the only one that's not Nephilim. Some people will get that.
Yeah.
Tracy's out there; she'll get that.
Bible scholars. So, favorite vampire movie other than Dracula? You said your vote is going to be the other than Dracula, because you said Franklin Kelly, he is Dracula. But what's your favorite non-Dracula vampire movie? Is it? Would you say it was From Dusk Till Dawn?
No, I like From Dusk to Dawn a lot, and there's a couple of dance scenes in there that almost makes it a winner. But what's the other one? I'm gonna go with Lost Boys, probably for the most modern vampire movie that's really good. That's not Dracula. I really like the way they did Lost Boys.
Lost Boys is a great pick.
I know that's probably not the best choice, but to me, I like Lost Boys a lot.
Well, it's one of those quintessential 80s movies where when you watch it, you're like, oh my god, this is such an 80s movie. It's like Repo Man. It's like when you're watching it, oh my god, this is so 80s. The hairstyles are all 80s, the fashion's the 80s, the music is all 80s.
But once again, let me point out that I really like Fright Night. I really, really like Bordello of Blood. I like Dennis Miller's performance in that movie a lot, better than everything else about it.
It's a great movie.
And I have to give, even though it goes back before the 80s, I think, I don't know, it might have been 79, 80. The Salem's Lot TV movie with David Soul, I thought that for a TV thing was probably better than some of the crap in theaters.
That was amazing. I loved that when I was a kid. And
Me too.
I think it was 79.
78 or 79, I think. I'm not sure on that.
But if I remember correctly, wasn't it delayed for some reason? Wasn't it supposed to come out and then there was some production problem and it didn't come out until like a year later?
I don't know. I just know it was on TV and I watched it and I was like, for a few days there, it wasn't all one night. It was on parts, like 3 nights. And I remember them were 3 nights of like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And
Lance Kerwin is the boy in that. Those of you probably remember him from James and 15.
Yeah. Even though Lance Kerwin's in it, it's still a good movie.
Mrs. Thrash had such a crush on him when she was a kid.
So what do you think, Siri? Did you ever see the Salem's Lot TV thing?
No, I did not. I know of it, but I never saw it.
See,
y'all gotta remember, okay?
Oh, I love her.
Growing up, my parents were very religious, okay, Mormons, right? So I didn't get to watch a lot of things. Everything was, about the devil. Sorry, I'm trying to play catch up. All right, I swear.
Yeah. I've had this same conversation with Dave Sunstorm before. He grew up the same way, and that's why he knows all about Andy Griffith and Mayberry and everything.
Well,
And I grew up.
unfortunately know about Star Trek, so I'm slightly cooler.
Yeah, I grew.
It's funny because Dave told speaking of vampires, Dave told this amazing story about he used to watch Dark Shadows, and he used to watch it with his mother. That was like a major no-no. Like his father would have been like and there was one time he got really, really scared. He woke up in a bad dream, and he admitted that he watched Dark Shadows, and he's like, "Who did you watch it with?" And he goes, I couldn't knock my mother out. So it's a really great story that he actually stood by. His father found out that he watched the show, but he never said that his mother let him watch it. And it's funny because years later, I guess my grandmother, my father's mother, loved Dark Shadows when it was in first run. And I remember I would have been about 8 or 9 at this point. A local TV station was showing it in rerun. And I remember watching it with her. I would come for a visit, and her and I were watching it together. And I'm like, this is a great show. And she's like, yeah, and this is the funny part, though. Yeah, but they don't show the episodes in order. And I didn't care, because it was just a cool show. Well, yeah, you get it. It was just a really cool show with cool, strange happenings. It's a soap opera. And if you don't watch a soap opera in order, it makes absolutely no
Right,
sense.
like Baywatch, right? We used to watch that, or tried to watch that when it was out, right? But they aired everything so out of order, and then they didn't release things, and all kinds of weird things happening. So every week, we used to go watch it. We're like, wait, I didn't remember that from last time. Wait, I don't remember that from last time. So I never knew what was happening there. Then later on, I find out that they just say, well, I don't know numbers over there, and I'm like, I guess not. It's crazy.
Does anybody out there remember there was actually a reboot? And I say reboot because the days before.
Yeah, the Dark Shadows, 2004.
No. Before that, this is like from 19.
I saw that movie. It was okay.
I'm not talking about the movie with Johnny Depp. I'm talking about the reboot series. Like it lasted like 8 episodes.
Well, I'm going back to the 90s, and I believe what was his name? Why am I asking you? But it was actually it was weird. It was set in New England, and it involved time travel, where you go back and forth between the time of Barnabas and the present day, and they were going to burn this one girl as a witch, and it ended on a cliffhanger episode. But I'm like, it was just really. It came out right after Twin Peaks, and all the girls I knew at the time loved Twin Peaks, and they were like, "This is going to be our." When Twin Peaks ended, they go, "This is going to be our new show." But it was actually, I thought it was pretty good.
I think I saw that. I think I saw some of that. You know, I never liked none of the remakes of Dark Shadows. The best thing they done was the movie with Johnny Depp that even come close to being halfway entertaining, and it was not what I liked, but it was entertaining.
I heard he was trying too hard to make it a spoof.
It was entertaining. I'll give it that. What else can you do with Dark Shadows 40 years later besides do a kind of a spoof?
Oh well, my mom told me about it 40 years later, so that was fun.
But I remember when I was a kid, like 7, 8 years old, we hurried. We almost ran from school, so we'd make it home before Dark Shadows come on.
That's what my mom said.
For a year and a half, you know, we was like every day trying to get home to watch Dark Shadows.
You know, as a matter of fact, Dark Shadows is on Roku TV. No, it's Tubi. It's on Tubi right now. Maybe Roku. I'm not sure.
And I think I got a lot of it on DVD.
We are talking about the same program, indeed. Because he said 2004. This is from the early 90s.
Oh no. He was talking about TV series. I talked about the movie, and you talked about the original. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. That's 3 different incarnations.
3 different dimensions of Dark Shadows. Brought to you by Daddy Thrash and Sarah.
Right?
We're so smart, we don't know what we're talking about.
Wah, wah, wah.
That's the best.
Dark Shadows rebooted 1991. There we go. Thank you. And it's Indy for the win.
And no matter who they are, which channel they're on, they're amazing chat because they know the answers to everything.
Hashtag facts. Engage with the chat. Hit that like. Let's
Or,
start
or,
out. Alright.
So, where were we?
Okay.
we were talking about how bad vampires sucked. Nah. And that's one of my favorite scenes from Love at First Bite. Have you ever seen the movie called Love at First Bite?
Love at first bite.
For those that don't know, it's a vampire spoof movie from the, I think, 70s.
Late 70s.
Late 70s.
And,
And the Von Helsing guy gets locked up in the mental institution, and his girlfriend goes to check him out to see if he's okay to come out, and he's sitting in the bed drawing a picture of Dracula, and right under the bottom he wrote "Dracula sucks." And it's like the funniest scene from a Dracula comedy movie ever. Now, Sarah, have you saw that one? It's raw comedy
I guess that is that the one where he's in a straitjacket
with George Hamilton, and I can't remember the other guy though.
and he's reading a newspaper, and so he has to like turn over the lips. So he's in a straitjacket, and he's like, oh, and then he goes back to reading it because for some reason I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. It was Richard Benjamin, the guy who played Quark.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was sitting there trying to remember his name so hard.
Sherman or whatever his name is.
It's so hard to capture these actors' names from movies 30 years ago now.
George Hamilton plays the vampire, and also another great scene is Renfield is trying to blackmail this woman into doing something. You're going to do this, or else. And he puts a lunchbox on the table, or else you eat your lunch in my office. No, my lunch is going to eat you, and it was like King Cobra, and it was just hysterical.
It was one of my favorite comedy movies about vampires. The guy from Police Academy made a really funny vampire movie. Love it. Dracula Dead and Loving It. And,
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
You see, I knew I would come up with something in the movie Virgin Scene.
Yeah. It's comedy. I've probably seen it. Spoof movie song.
See, I told you I'd come up with something for you to talk about, Sarah. Tell us all about what you thought about that movie.
I haven't seen that in years. I can't remember anything offhand right now. I just know I've seen that movie. That was super funny.
It kind of was like the Police Academy of vampire movies.
Yeah, it was great.
Or the Police Squad. The Police Squad of vampire movies.
Is Leslie Nielsen is the vampire in that?
Yeah.
Or am I thinking of
It's
it?
the Dracula with false teeth. Artie Johnson's like his little sidekick. It had some really
Artie Johnson was amazing.
it had a really good comic relief in it. It really did. I liked that movie a lot. I found it very amusing.
No, I just like listening to his movies in general. He's amazing. It's just like I said though. The one time I saw him, the first time I ever saw him doing a serious part was in MASH, you know. And I'm like, any minute now, something funny, right? Come on, nothing. Worst episode ever. All right, there we go.
Well, it's so true. Leslie, that's why Airplane is such a funny movie. They got all these leading men types from the 50s and then recast them. And the reason Leslie Nielsen works so well, he's the only one who played it totally straight. Robert Stack, Lloyd Bridges, that you could tell they were having fun with it. They were doing it tongue-in-cheek. But Leslie Nielsen, no, he played it totally straight. And that's why he became the funniest thing in that whole movie. But yeah, you watch like, Forbidden Planet. He plays a badass in that. He usually plays these like badass characters. And it's so funny that he went from that to being this like slapstick comedian. It's great.
Yeah, he had a long career with lots of changes in it. Because I remember seeing him in some serious roles in movies like where he's a cop and stuff.
But you're so right, Sarah. You expect him to say something funny because that's what we remember him as. We remember him as Lieutenant Drummond from Police Squad.
Yes. Yeah, so me growing up, I only saw him in funny things, and then one day somebody told me, no, before he did that, he was a serious actor. I'm like, you're funny. That's funny. And then I saw that episode of Bash. I was like, oh no, they're serious. Gosh, dang, that's just terrible. And then I saw other things with him like that. I'm like, no fall, no nothing, nothing.
How about his performance? How about his performance in Creep Show?
I didn't see that.
You probably give you
Did
nightmares.
not see Creep Show.
I don't have cable.
I think it's on
You
YouTube.
don't understand when I called her a movie virgin, I really and truly meant that. She's the official movie virgin. Lots of these horror movies, she has no clue. And that's so cool that if we ever get to hang out, I'm going to have so much fun showing her horror movies and tormenting her with my DVD collection.
Well, good. It sounds
Creep
good.
Show was like a game changer horror movie. It was like there was like before and after Creep Show. In fact, here's one for you. You know how of course Sarah, I'm very sorry you haven't seen it, but it's done as a comic
Right.
book. So they kind of stage it like that. In fact, a lot of the scenes has like exposition, like in the comic book panel. They were supposed to do that for the Warriors, but at the last minute, Terrence Hill changed his mind, so they didn't do it. But I thought it worked great for Creep Show. And yeah, the scene, the segment with Leslie Nielsen, he's playing opposite Ted Danson, and again, same thing. Ted Danson, nobody expected him to be playing Sam Malone from Cheers, and he's not. So these two comedic actors doing this very, very, very creepy role. It's very funny,
Nice.
or not funny, I should say. It's funny that it isn't funny.
Well, I just gotta say, like, it's not my fault, okay? Just, you know, all right, it's not my fault. I'll get there someday. I'll see it all. I swear.
Mm.
Promise.
Start with the original Harold the Hatter performance called London After Midnight.
I've heard of it. It's a lost film, so all I've ever done is seen a few stills.
I've actually seen a few clips from it that survived. Probably about 12 minutes, I think.
Wow.
And that was Lon Chaney Senior.
Yeah.
That was Lon Chaney.
And he wore that big tall top hat being the vampire creeping around London.
And he didn't just have fangs; he had like interlocking teeth. Like,
Yeah, he was horrific looking for the time.
Well, he was Lon Chaney, Creighton Hall Senior, was the greatest makeup artist in his day. You guys ever seen the movie about his life with Jimmy Cagney?
Mm-mm.
It's very, very interesting. Although he died of a stroke. Now, I don't know if you know this. One of the things about Lon Chaney Sr. that made him a great actor, both his parents were profoundly deaf.
Wow.
So when he was growing up as a kid,
So they weren't
He
just
had
deaf,
to-
they were profoundly deaf. Got it.
they couldn't hear it all. So he had to emote and was very expressive with his hands and his face. And so when he became, of course, it was a silent movie era, but he was very adept at portraying emotion and thoughts with his features. So he was perfect. He also knew sign language very well.
Sign language.
Because both his parents were deaf. The
Wow.
story goes that when he was dying from the stroke, he had a stroke. He could speak to his son through sign, and there's a great scene in the movie where he takes his makeup kit, and it says Creighton Hall, and he adds Junior to it with his one good hand, and gives it to him, and it's a great scene. It never happened. Apparently, that was completely made up by Hollywood, but it's a pity because it was such a great scene. But yes, that's how Lon Chaney Jr. learned his makeup techniques from his father.
I did not know that.
That's crazy.
I have a lot of anecdotes up here.
Wow, that's a good place to keep them.
Some of them are even accurate. Ask Indy. No, but some.
Right? But they could just have Indy here to give us all the accuracy.
In fact, Indy, how much of what I just said was true?
He stopped Googling. He's like, I can't Google that much.
Indy doesn't go. He has it all in here.
No, actually, I think I'd heard that Lon Chaney Jr. really didn't want nothing to do with horror movies, and he had tried his hand at doing everything but horror movies up until a point where he just couldn't make a living, and finally he took the role just to get paid, and found out that that's what he was going to be, whether he wanted it or not.
That sounds right. That does sound right.
Ah.
Ah.
Where did Bonds go? So down with glasses is there.
Oh,
Or
and
Superman.
Steve, we haven't said anything. You should. How much of what I just said was true? You should know from your channel as well.
I've come up with this theory where I think Tug is doing something to freeze you up on purpose. Just to mess with you, because when you're on here, I noticed you ain't froze up or not one time. I'm beginning to have the Tug conspiracy theory.
I'm gonna tell you.
Because people be betting on when you freeze up. Now all of a sudden you freeze up at a certain time and he's winning. Come on, I see the
I
conspiracy.
like 4 or 5 times a day on his channel.
I know. I saw the conspiracy.
It's gonna because remember our first show we had some technical problems. I go if my show this early today went that badly, I can only imagine what that was gonna be. And knock on wood. So far, so good. Although, this is a true story. I actually tapped my table once, and I tapped it so hard that I jiggled something free. And I actually ruined the feed, so I won't...
Shit, I'm all happy the show's been going so good. You know, when I try to do a show, a hurricane usually comes blow something away.
Dad's out there just flying in the air. Hey, you guys seen this?
Yeah, well, I guess look out the window and see a trampoline blowing by and go, Danny must have been going to do a show today.
Emily wants to know, Pons and Dan, are we having trivia night?
We're not having a tribute.
No, Pond will be doing trivia next Sunday night.
Chris Christopherson.
And I probably won't be there for that because I'm not a Chris Christopherson guy, except for that one movie where it was a vampire movie he was in called Blade.
Yes, I do.
See what I did there? See what I did there and segmented back into vampires?
Good job.
Mm-hmm. That's a trained professional right there.
Well played.
So what do you think about Blade? It's actually based on a comic book.
Yes, it is. I'm actually racking my brains right now because Indy says, if you can tell me the actress in that skit from Creep Show, I'll be impressed, Thrash. And I'm trying to remember which sketch had a waitress in it. I remember the first one takes place in a creepy little house during a commemorative dinner. Is there a waitress in the garden party in the crate? I don't recall a waitress in that. There's none in the Lonely Death of whatever the Stephen King one was. I don't recall a waitress. So Indy, I can't in this case unless you can remind me of which sketch in question of which you are in reference.
Yeah, and if she was a vampire, it'd help.
A vampire waitress?
A vampire waitress.
But anyway, so
Okay.
But yeah, a Blade was pretty slick.
I've seen the first Blade, anyways.
I like Blade movies. I really do to a certain extent, but I think it was the third one that had Triple H, the wrestler, in it, and the comic book team called the Night Stalkers, and I think that's probably my favorite movie of that bunch. More because I like the wrestler Triple H and his the perfect vampire, badass guy, you know.
Yeah. I'm just thinking Triple H is doing vampire stuff. It's not a comedy, is it? It's not a comedy?
No, I didn't like the guy who finally wound up playing Blade, the new guy. But.
Yeah, Indy, I don't remember a waitress. I remember Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson and his Becky is the girl, and she's actually played. She was in another George Romero movie. He was in The Dead. Actually, she plays the girl in that. But I don't recall her being a waitress. She's Leslie Nielsen's wife, who was having an affair with Ted Danson character. Is that what you were looking for? We can go with that. And her father was a horror TV host as well. But going forward, I hope that at least covers the base, Indy.
Everybody wants you to know, Pons, they love your quizzes, okay?
Oh, they love my what?
Your quizzes. Just let you know. everybody.
Yeah, they can't wait till next week when you got to ask some questions. You got to start doing when we do our show. You got to come up with 5 questions for the panel, or 5 questions for the chat or something.
Yeah, we could do something like that. We could.
Oh,
There's nobody saying one, guys, and we usually got everybody here at the same time, all working tech-wise at the same time. So we'll get there, okay?
So I have no problem doing a 5-question quiz or something, or a little bit of trivia in the chat. Whenever y'all do that, that'll be my chance to go smoke for the break. Ah!
Yeah.
Next show, I'll have an out for 5 minutes.
There you go.
The next time, I will do that. Next time I'll have a brief trivia quiz. And Indy, I see it was actress. I think I was reading without my glasses on. I saw a waitress. It was actress. And Gail Ross is the young lady. Galen Ross is the young lady's name. Thank you. And her father was a horror host. So, Indy, you are finally on the same page, and I doff my cap as always. And that explains that.
So, who was your favorite? Who was your favorite TV comedy vampire? Grandpa Monster.
He was great.
He was my favorite. You know.
He was great.
He was my favorite character of the monsters, so.
Oh, Herman. Herman had to be my favorite character. Herman. There's one scene. I don't remember it in a second. I don't know if you guys remember the episode. They found out that Marilyn, her school, she was having a school parents' night, but didn't invite her folks. And Herman's like, let's just ask her. And Lily's like, no, that'll embarrass her. I tell you what, at dinner tonight, I'll bring up the new cars that have come out this year, and then I'll bring up driving. And then I'll bring up driving to school. And then I'll mention school events. And I'll mention parents' night. And then we'll find out why she didn't ask us. And Herman's like, love the plan. We'll really sneak it up on her. And then at dinner, Lily goes, so, Marilyn, what do you think about the new cars that came out this year? And Herman goes, and how come you didn't invite us to parents' night at your school? And I lost it. I absolutely lost it.
Well, I was so bad for her because she was the playing one, and they were always just like treating her like she had a disease.
You know,
I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
there was this TV show that didn't last long. I think it lasted maybe 11 episodes before it got canceled. And it was called Cliffhangers. I don't know if you ever saw this show. I love this show. It's one of them shows I wish it never got canceled. But it had like 3 little different 20-minute things from 3 little 20-minute stories going on. One was about these cowboys in a lost city under a desert. But one was a vampire show. It was a Dracula thing they done. Like a modern day Dracula. And it was this show was so good and such a great portrayal of Dracula going on in modern times. It really was a shame that show got canceled. Are you Googling it?
I remember.
Me? I'm not doing anything. I'm getting bad.
Yeah, it was probably before you was born.
I vaguely remember it. I vaguely remember that.
It probably come on when Sarah was 2.
Yeah, I'm a child. What do you want? Okay.
How old are you, Sarah? Just for discussion.
I'm 42.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I'm 15 years older than you. I'm 57.
Yeah, everybody lets me know how much older they are.
Cliffhangers TV show.
Yeah, it's like a million years older than me. I don't know, something like that. I forget.
No, what did we decide? You're a year and a half older than I am?
Yeah, so he is Father Time up here. We got that. Okay.
TV show, 70s, Cliffhangers.
Grandpa's dozing off here.
Okay, it's from 1979.
Cliffhangers.
Trying to figure out who played in it. That's a whole different story.
Mercy.
All right, somebody. Emily's daughter is younger than me. I'm like somebody. I can be Emily. I know how to remember.
And here's the funny thing: Emily is still younger than I am.
Most people are
Not
young.
much.
Most people are younger than I am.
I've noticed.
And those that aren't are usually in wheelchairs getting pushed around by their nurse. Wah, wah, wah.
Hey, I would love to live in a retirement home. All the green jello I could eat, You know, watching the Weather Channel sounds like paradise to me.
It is till the hurricane comes
Yeah, now.
till the hurricane comes and takes the power away and the jello melts and nobody comes by and you have to throw your meat away. Yeah. Sometimes being old sucks.
No, it does. It does.
My brother's 3 years older than I am, so there you go.
All my brothers are older than me but one.
Woohoo!
Okay, maybe two.
Woohoo,
How
man.
many brothers do you have?
14 brothers and 2 sisters.
God,
But counting stepbrothers, and my dad was married 3 times, and my mother was married multiple times, and you wound up with a lot of stepbrothers and step family.
So I have one brother. It's crazy.
how many how many grandchildren do you have? Like 17?
Excuse me.
How many grandchildren do you have? You told me you had
17.
grandchildren. It is 17?
Yeah.
Wow, that was like a random guess. It really was 17.
So Dan has a little army, a generational army behind him.
The football team, you know?
Yeah. No, it's just straight up an army at this point.
That's crazy.
So I have 0 kids, 1 brother. It's like, wow. Tom, how many siblings do you have, or do you have kids?
I have a brother and a sister. Both of whom live in North Carolina. One lives in Wilmington out on the coast. The other lives in Raleigh. They're doing okay. I checked with them after the storm. One daughter, granddaughter. One daughter and one granddaughter. It's Shane. And at this point, 3 nieces and nephews. All from my brother.
So, Sparky, thanks, but no thanks. I have birds. That's what I chose. Okay, so I can put them in a cage and just walk away. I know sure your kids are adults, but birds. Okay. But thanks, Snarky. But if I need to borrow one, I'll contact you. I promise.
Okay then.
All right.
That was a good joke, but that was a good joke, but it kind of laid an egg.
What?
I said that was a good joke, but it kind of laid an egg.
But I'm bummed.
It happens. I ran a foul. Sorry.
But I'm bummed.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, birds of a feather.
Yeah, they flock together. It's crazy.
So, any closing thoughts on vampires, Thrash?
Just that, like, again, I've pretty much grown up with them from when I was a kid to now. As you guys know, I'm vintage all the way. I know there've been a lot of modern takes on the whole vampire saga. There was an episode of X-Files, which isn't really modern. It's about 30 years old now. That was a very good. But I'm pretty much your classic vampires, from the Universal to the Hammer horror. Probably Monster Club. Monster Club, which of course is an anthology, but it's a lighthearted anthology, and that's sort of my bracket. But again, there's really no wrong answer. That's the thing about the whole vampire lore. It fits perfectly. I mean, there were romantic vampire stories, there were horror vampire stories, there were comedy vampire stories. Whatever hits your wheelhouse, watch them and have fun. And then the perfect monster for Halloween. Or in our case, Howl a month.
Exactly. I agree with everything you said, times 10. I almost forgot about bringing up the old TV show Monster Squad, which had the werewolf, Dracula, and Frankenstein solving mysteries in the 70s. I know Sarah seen that because I live streamed it one night.
I was just going to say, I remember watching that on yours, yeah.
Yeah, that was something I covered on when I was doing live streams before. I guess I'm going to start back pretty soon doing a few things. I'm going to start back doing a little live streaming, I think. I'm going to do a fireside chat and stuff like that pretty soon. When I get done piling up the mountain of wood to burn.
I've seen that pile of wood.
It's huge. They're going to be able to see that thing from space when I light it up.
Well, one can only hope.
Keep the vampires away.
And the Bigfoots and the aliens and the giant spiders.
And the giant
Find out,
spiders, yeah.
Find out over there.
I put the video up today if anybody wants to watch it. Nellie Dan versus the giant spiders, probably from Mars.
It's also my community post as well.
It's inspired by Ziggy Stardust on the title from that one. But that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that big spider was Ziggy Stardust and the spiders from Mars, because this spider is big enough it has to be from Mars. And I just had a UFO sighting before that happened. So it kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, you get all the things happening before we go live to talk about this, and it's all spooky around you, so hold me. You know, a few months back, you filmed what you thought was a full moon on not a night of a full moon. That was pretty funny.
No, I'm like, yeah, the full moon. Somebody texted me and said, like, hey, dude, ain't no full moon tonight. And I was sitting there looking at it, man. But it was a big brown thing of light in the sky. I thought it was the moon. So ain't no telling what I would have noticed if I'd been sober.
Right. Well, anyway, so I steal it and make a thing out of it. It's really funny.
The moon is always full in here.
It's cheese.
Now you got me thinking about how classic Monsters inspired so many cartoons, like Scooby-Doo and the Gang, or Fang Face the Werewolf. We had to do a whole show on that one day. But Tug will probably beat me to it.
We can still do one.
We'll have to finish the conversation.
Hey, Tom.
But are we wrapping it up here tonight?
Yes, and I gotta tell you, I've had so much fun tonight, guys. This was a blast.
Because we had planned on doing our show about, I think it was 75 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes.
And that we're just coming up on 75 minutes now.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up, because that's our kind of our little quitting time. Because
so after the outro, if you want to sit back and talk for a minute, you can. If not, whatever. Good night, everybody. Thanks for letting us come into your cell phones and computers and TVs and
happy trails.
Bye.
Peace.
And all.